My mom gave me up for $2,500. So, backstory, my mom and dad split up when I was roughly 9/10 years old due to my mother cheating on my father when he was out of the country. He's a pilot. At the time, it was me and my two older sisters, one of which was already an adult, so my other sister and I were left under my mother's custody due to my father always flying and not wanting us to go through moving all the time. As far as the details go, my dad not only paid my mom child support but also paid off the house. Despite having little money to take care of himself, he paid my mom more than what he actually owed. Yet, my sister and I never saw that money. After the divorce, my mom turned to many things, sleeping around, gambling, drinking, and eventually meth, though that didn't last long due to my dad finding out and threatening to take us away. My sister practically became my mother since ours decided to step down from the plate and I was too young to take care of myself. When my sister left for college, all the emotional abuse she took ended up falling on me, which sent me into a loop. Due to my sister taking all the damage, I typically saw my mother as, well, my mother. My young brain didn't notice how often she didn't come home at night or the lack of food in the house or the constant weeks I'd wear one outfit since I didn't have other clothes that fit. I didn't notice how not normal this is. Heading into high school, it became more and more obvious this wasn't right at all, yet I still loved my mother. We bantered and ate fast food together and she was proud of my accomplishments. But she had her moments, dropping huge hints that I'm too boyish like my dad, refusing to let me cut my hair, pressuring me into wearing makeup, heels, dresses, convincing me I don't need therapy as my therapist at the time made me uncomfortable, one of those Christian therapists that made everything about God. While I am a Christian, it didn't help the conversation, and so on. Meanwhile, my dad met a woman and they fell in love. When she became pregnant with his kid, he moved her to America after my little sister was born and started a new family. I love my stepmom, she's literally the sweetest woman I know, and I adore my baby sister, and eventually my second baby sister. Over time, after spending many nights in their home, I came to realize how much happier I was at their house over my mother's. One day, I told my dad I want to officially live with him. At this point in time, I've noticed how depressed I am and how things aren't normal in my mom's house. When I told my mother this, she was deeply upset and cried, but she understood, or so I thought. That's when everything went downhill. The text messages started, sly guilt trips and remarks on how someone else convinced me to move out, that my father convinced me she was the bad guy. The more these texts happened, the warier I became on talking to her. It got to the point where I would cry after every conversation because I was so confused and lost. One day, she practically trapped me in her car in my best friend's driveway to tell me how my reasons for leaving her were bullshit and that I clearly don't remember what it was like in that house. Cue my memory issues. But enough about that. Let's get to the good part, the custody case. Due to me being the last child between my mother and father, my dad no longer had to pay child support. Obviously, they go to court about this. Except my mom didn't show up. For many hearings. When she did, she had this bullshit story about how my dad owed her a shitload of money because he never paid the full child support, how she felt pressured to believe him and trust him when he said he knew how much he owed her. He did. He calculated it himself and actually paid more than what was needed. So, if you're catching on, this fight was about money. Here's a fun little thing. My mom texted me maybe a month before this case started about how she desperately wants me to come home, how she will do anything to get her baby back. That aged well, didn't it? Because one day, my mom stated that if my dad pays her $2,500, she will give up full custody of me. My dad agreed to it and it was over. She gave up her custody rights for $2,500. It still stings. I'm still bitter and angry to this day about it, and this case happened years ago. I don't think my mom is aware I know the details on this case as she, very rarely, reaches out to me as if we still have a relationship to tell me how much she loves and misses me. The thing is I learned that my mom actually despised me after the divorce because I reminded her of my dad. We have the same eyes and resting face lol. My mom just loves being the victim and even tried to convince my sister she doesn't remember doing all the stuff she did to us. She even blamed my dad for her cheating on him and said so to my face. I haven't had a real conversation with her since Christmas, over the phone OFC, and haven't seen her in person since maybe before the pandemic. She texted me recently all excited about a gift she got for my sister's unborn baby, and it sent a whole new wave of resentment towards her. I stopped trying long ago to have a relationship with her, as she doesn't try in return and will continue to do so until she admits her wrongs, apologizes, and actually tries to be a fucking mother for once in her life. Until then, my only mother is my lovely stepmom. Entitled mother kicks me out because I refuse to date her friend's daughter. For those who are aware, I was kicked out by my mother at the tender age of 16. Why I was though, I never went into detail about the nature of the incident. For those who want to know about that, well, here it is. My mom, as many know, is a religious nutcase. However, I am not. See the problem? My mother hates the fact that I refuse to let religion into my heart. I'm sorry, but it's just not my thing. I respect people who wish to practice religion, but for me it's not something I want to do. Before my dad died, my mother was unable to force me into religion because my father is a big believer that people are entitled to their own belief. So when he died, I think I found a gold mine of an opportunity. Me? It's the turning point that made my life hell. I'll spare you the details on most things, but every time I complained she would pull the exact same line each time: I am your mother, and the reason you're alive. You must honor thy mother and father, so if you don't do that you have no business living in this house. And I wasn't really looking to get kicked out, so I had no choice but to comply. I had my older sister to vent to on the phone, but she lived far because she and my Bill were looking after her sick mother-in-law, so there wasn't much she could do. I never told anyone what my mom was doing because I was scared to get kicked out. What brought things to a head is when I came back from school one time and saw some random girl I've never met before sitting on the couch. My mom introduced me to her and said this is the daughter of a woman she recently made friends with. My mom told me that I was going to take her out to a movie that was showing that night. I was stunned, because this was completely out of the blue, and I told my mom that I was going over to my best bud Kane's place to study, but my mom told, not asked, told me that I was going to take her out, and that this could be good for me. The girl was smiling throughout the whole interaction, and I felt bad, so I called up Kane and told him that we'd have to study another time. He seemed a bit downcast, but said he understood. I know, I was stupid, but I was young and dumb. Live and learn, I guess. The date itself wasn't horrible per se, but the girl was awfully clingy to me the entire time, called me weird nicknames, and got upset when I corrected people who assumed she was my girlfriend. When I got back, I decided that wasn't something I'd deal with again. My mom asked me how it went, and I told her I don't plan on doing that again. She asked me why, and I told her that I just don't want to. This girl isn't someone I'm interested in. My mom told me that I'm being ridiculous, and I'll get used to it, and that I need to show more respect to my future partner. I asked mom what she was talking about, and she told me that she and her mom agreed that we'd be perfect for each other and that we'd be a good husband and wife couple. I told her that's not happening at all, and for one, I was 16 at the time, so it's a bit too early for me to be thinking about marriage. She told me that as my mother, she knows best and she's picked the perfect partner for me. I refused, and said I am not dating that girl. My mother pulled her usual line of honor thy mother and father, and that she'll kick me out if I don't comply, blah, blah, blah. I told her that she can't force me to do this, but she told me that she knows what's best, and if I don't like it then I have to make a decision regarding my future in this household. I then went to my room to think about what the hell happened. I called my sister and told her what happened. She knows before this that I didn't want to get kicked out because I was scared of that. But she knocked some sense into me and told me I have to stand up to my mom, and that if my mom does kick me out, I still have a strong support system in my father's side of the family. And it's true, the reason I never stood up my mom till now was because I was afraid of getting kicked out. Because of that, I never realized how strong the support of my family. And it's true. I loved my father's family so much, and most of my maternal family had my back as well. Even Kane told me it's time I stopped pandering to my mom's dictatorship. So I did it. The next morning, my mom asked me if I've come to my senses. I told her no, I'm not dating that girl. My mom screamed and said that she got that girl for me, and that I'm an ungrateful brat, and that if I just accept religion, I won't be corrupted anymore. I shouted back, "Listen, I'm done with your fucking religion. Ever since Dad died, you've done nothing but impose it on me and threaten me with homelessness each time I have a problem with it. I've put up with it till now, but I've had enough of subjecting myself to this shit even though I hate it. I'm fucking done with this. I want nothing to do with it anymore." My mom was shocked, and she had this expression as if I just stabbed her or something. She screamed at me, and told me if that's how it is, then I can get out, as my corrupt being has no place in a pure sanctuary like this house. So I did. I packed up my shit, and left. I went to my paternal aunt's house. When I told her what happened, she was shocked. Mainly because she knew my mom was religious crazy, but she never thought she'd go this far. My aunt called my mom and ripped into her, said a bunch of colorful things that I won't repeat here, and basically left my mom crying. My mom didn't even offer a real defense. She just cried and said that everyone hates her, everyone is against her, etc. It didn't go good for her in the aftermath as well, as once my maternal family got wind of what happened, they all cut her off. Apparently, my maternal grandfather went ballistic and called her and shouted all kinds of obscenities at her. Honestly, I think he would have damn near went to her house and killed her if he could. I'm 18 years old now, going on 19. I'm living my life with my aunt, uncle, cousin. Things are going good for me. My only regret was not getting help sooner, as when I look back, I feel like an idiot for not realizing that I had such strong family support behind me. Entitled parents called me privileged for using a disabled space. Some context: I, 18F, have a heart condition and a hip condition. I have to use a wheelchair to get around. I can walk but only for a short distance, before I either get tired or my hips start hurting. Now, pre-COVID, my parents and I were traveling by train for a hospital trip. Just a checkup, nothing serious. I was sitting in the disabled space, in my wheelchair, which had a small table and lots of space so I could get out easily. My parents were sitting on the seats beside me, reading magazines and playing games on their phones. I plugged my headphones into my laptop and started watching a movie. This was when the entitled parents came in, with a ton of luggage and a pushchair in tow. The parents started filling up the space around and behind my chair with their luggage, and because I have social anxiety, I didn't know what to do or say, worried that if I did say anything, it would come off as rude, so I just sat there, panicking. Thankfully my mom piped up and very politely said, "Excuse me, that's a wheelchair space, please don't put your luggage there. My daughter won't be able to get out to use the WC or if there's an emergency." The mom complained that the bays are full. Which wasn't true at all. There was an empty luggage bay, very close by, that they could have used. My mom explained that this isn't a luggage space, it's for a disabled person. The entitled parents, of course, ignored my mom, took their toddler out of the pushchair and then proceeded to stuff the pushchair behind my wheelchair. My dad basically repeated what my mom had said, and the M turned around and snapped, "Well, we have a small child in a pushchair, that's the same thing. We should be entitled to put our pushchair there." To which, she was told, "We booked this space in advance, specially, we have paid for it. You've paid for your seats, and we've paid for this space." My dad followed this up by saying, "Imagine how you would feel if I came along and dumped my luggage by your seats." They continued to argue with my parents, until finally, the train manager arrived and it turned out that they hadn't actually reserved seats at all, so they were asked to sit in the fold-down seats in the corridor, with their luggage and pushchair. We thought it was the end of it, but we were wrong. They sat just the other side of the partition door, right in the view and earshot of us, and spent the entire hour and a half of the journey, complaining about how disabled people are privileged and how we get everything we want, like luxury spaces on trains and close parking spaces. I just rolled my eyes. This is one of the many experiences I've had. My goodness, I'm so privileged.